the gas station stalker. He smiled at me like he'd been waiting for me all night. The highway had thinned to a single line of light in the rearview. It was 1:12 a.m., that tired hour when even the radio gives up. My gas light had been glowing for 20 miles, so when a lonesome station appeared I pulled in like a moth. The canopy buzzed. Moths spiraled. The air smelled like cold rubber. One other car sat by the far pump, an old blue sedan, hood up. A man leaned against it, hands in pockets, eyes on me. He didn't fix anything. He didn't move. Keep it transactional. I stepped out. The night wrapped me like wet cloth. The pump screen flickered to ads. The man smiled, small, like I'd arrived on schedule. "Long drive?" he called. "Yeah," I said, squeezing the handle. I avoided looking. My heart thudded anyway. He didn't pump gas. He drifted toward the store. I followed. Standing in the open felt like being a bug on a plate. The bell gave a tired jingle. Inside smelled of burnt coffee. Fluorescence hummed. I grabbed water, pretzels, a coffee I wouldn't drink. When I turned down the next aisle, he was there again. 2 feet behind me. Close enough to hear his wet breath. I shifted. He shifted. Every shelf I stopped at, he stopped, half a beat later, like a rehearsal. At the counter, the clerk never looked up from his phone. "That it?" "That's it," I said, voice too light. Behind me, the man exhaled through his teeth like he was savoring something. The card terminal glitched, froze, then came back. My fingers felt numb on the buttons. "Be safe out there," the clerk mumbled. The bell jingled as I pushed outside. The night felt colder. The pumps hissed to no one. I slid into my car and locked the doors. In the mirror, the store, the empty doorway. No blue sedan man. He stepped out of the shadows between the ice freezer and the propane cages like he'd been poured there. Met my eyes through 2 panes of glass and 30 feet of air. Still smiling. I started the engine. The sound felt fragile. I pulled toward the exit. The county road beyond was a black ribbon between trees. Headlights bloomed in my mirror. The blue sedan tucked in perfectly behind me. Coincidence, I thought. He's leaving too. I took the first right. He took it. The first left. He followed. I sped up. He matched. I slowed to let him pass. He didn't. My phone flickered from 2 bars to no service. The map froze in a green void. My breath fogged the cabin. My palms slid on the wheel. I turned down a road so narrow branches scraped both doors. He drifted through as if he knew the width of our cars by heart. Same neighborhood, same route, small town. My brain kept offering reasons. None lasted 10 seconds. A hand-painted sign pointed toward Alma Diner, closed. I bounced into the cracked lot and parked nose out. I pretended to make a call, phone to my ear, hand waving like someone was listening. He pulled in behind me and stopped so close my bumper vanished. He kept the engine idling. Headlights pinning me. "Yeah, I'm here, right now. 2 minutes," I said to no one, heart slamming. His driver door squealed. He got out. Not big. Somehow worse. One hand in his jacket pocket, he walked toward my window in a steady, on this pace walk. I cracked the glass an inch. "Can I help you?" It came out small. Up close his eyes looked milky, like dishwater. "You okay out here?" he asked. No concern. Just words. "I'm good," I said. "I'm meeting someone." He glanced at my phone, the dark diner, the empty highway. The smile peeled a little wider. "No service out here," he said. "Not for miles." He palmed the glass softly. His other hand stayed in his pocket. He looked past me into the car like counting seats. Headlights swept the lot. An 18-wheeler roaring past on the highway, horn yawning low as it hit the straight. The high beams washed everything white. He flinched. His hand slid off the window. 2 quick backward steps, eyes jumping from the truck to me to the road. Then he turned and ran. Full sprint to the sedan. Door slam. Tires spit gravel. He shot out, taillights shrinking to embers, then gone. I sat perfectly still. The diner returned to dull gray. A long minute passed before I remembered how to breathe. I drove to the nearest town at 25 like a 90-year-old with a casserole. At the police station, fluorescent light made everything look fake. I gave a statement with hands that wouldn't hold still. The officer typed, nodded, called a patrol to sweep the roads. "You did the right thing," he said. At dawn I watched a coffee in a paper cup go cold on my hood while I convinced my body to stop shaking. I drove home with the sun in my eyes and every car behind me a threat. That was months ago. My friends think I got spooked by a random driver. Maybe. I wish it felt that simple. Now, when a set of headlights clings to my bumper longer than it should, the world tightens. I rehearse exits. I count turns. I picture dead lots and glass doors that don't open fast enough. And sometimes, at a red light on an empty road, I catch myself searching the mirror for a face I saw for seconds. Small smile, dishwater eyes. Wondering if he's still out there, following someone else, practicing the routine until they stop pretending to call for help. Until the road is his again. The hallway man. I step off the elevator, and he was standing at my door. The building was so quiet I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above me. My shoes made no sound on the carpet. It was just past 2 a.m., and the city outside was asleep under a sheet of cold mist. I was coming home from another brutal night shift, half dead, thinking about nothing but collapsing in bed. The elevator doors opened, and I was already digging for my keys when I froze. There he was. A man. Standing directly in front of my apartment door. Not leaning on the wall. Not checking his phone. Just standing there. Bare feet on the carpet. No shoes. No bag. No sound. His head tilted slightly, like he'd been listening to the door before I arrived. My keys trembled in my fingers. Excuse me?" I said, my voice trying to be casual and cracking halfway through. He didn't answer. Didn't blink. Just watched me. My throat clicked as I swallowed. I forced my feet forward, trying to walk like I belonged here, like I wasn't unraveling inside. When I passed him, his head turned to follow me. Slow. Mechanical. The key scraped the lock before I got it in. I shoved the door open and slammed it behind me. The deadbolt clunked home. Silence. I pressed my back to the door, breathing through my teeth. A sound. A soft scrape. I leaned forward, peering through the peephole. He was inches away. Ear flattened to the wood, hair brushing the frame, eyes closed. Listening. Every muscle in my body screamed to run. Instead, I stood frozen as my heart slammed like fists on the inside of my ribs. The doorknob twitched. Then began to turn. Slowly. Metal grinding in tiny jerks, deliberate. I jolted into motion. I shoved the couch, the coffee table, anything I could grab against the door, stacking them like sandbags. My arms shook from adrenaline. The knob stopped. Silence. Then his voice slid through the crack under the door. My name. So, whispered like he was inside my head. My skin went cold. I stumbled backward, hands clamped over my mouth. He screamed. A single high, tearing shriek that made the walls shake. The lights blew out with a pop. Darkness drowned everything. I bolted to the bathroom, slammed the door, twisted the lock until it stopped. The tile was freezing under my knees as I crouched against the tub. The apartment beyond was silent. Too silent. No footsteps. No door opening. No retreat. Just thick, pressing dark. I stayed like that for hours, gripping the plunger handle like a weapon, trying to make my breathing silent. Dawn bled slowly through the frosted glass window. The apartment was gray when I finally crept out. I inched the couch aside, my arms trembling, and checked the peephole. Empty hallway. No footprints on the carpet. No sound but the faint buzz of the lights. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I left for work 2 hours early just to be around people. I've never told my neighbors. I don't know what's worse. That someone got that close to me, or that I don't know where he went. When the lights came back on. The park bench stranger. The bench was empty, until he sat inches from me. I wasn't supposed to stop. That park was just a shortcut on my evening run, a sliver of quiet tucked between apartment blocks and the river. The air was sharp with the first bite of autumn, and the trail lights buzzed faintly like dying insects. I slowed to catch my breath, lungs burning, legs trembling. My heart pounded in my ears. The bench was old wood, cold through my leggings as I sat down. The night hummed with soft traffic far away. Then, without a sound, someone sat down beside me. Not beside me, against me, pressed shoulder to shoulder like we were old friends. I flinched so hard the bench groaned. He stared straight ahead, posture perfectly still. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The bench was long, plenty of room, and he chose this spot. His smell hit first, metallic and sour, like rusted pennies soaked in milk. His lips twitched, then began moving silently, muttering, words too fast and tangled to catch, spilling like insects crawling over each other. My pulse climbed my throat. I eased an inch away. His eyes snapped toward me without turning his head. Dark, glassy, reflecting nothing. The muttering stopped. Then, softly, almost like a joke, "Would anyone notice if you vanished?" My breath caught like a hook in my chest. I forced a weak laugh. "Excuse me?" He smiled. Not kind, just stretched. His hand slid into his coat pocket. Came out holding a small blade, catching the dull orange glow of the lamp above. I stood slowly, my legs trembling. I should get home. His fingers clamped my sleeve. Tight. I yanked hard, fabric tearing with a hiss. I bolted. The world snapped into tunnel vision. Path, trees, dark blur. His feet slapped the path behind me. Faster. Closer. I sprinted toward the far street light where the trail met the road. A cyclist appeared, headlights swinging like a pendulum. "Help!" I screamed, voice cracking. The man's footsteps stopped. I didn't dare look back. The cyclist braked hard, eyes wide. "What's going on?" "Call the police." I gasped. The man was gone. No sound. No shape in the dark. Just empty path behind me like he'd never existed. The cyclist rode with me to the station entrance at the edge of the park and waited while I called 911. Officers combed the area, found nothing. No one. I sat on the curb, shaking until my legs went numb, clutching my ripped sleeve like proof. I never stop at that park anymore. I don't even walk past it, because now I know how easily someone can slip into your space. Without a sound, without warning, like they've been waiting for you to sit still, just long enough to decide if you'll run. The late-night librarian. The library had been closed for an hour, but someone was still walking between the aisles. It was the last week of finals, and my brain felt like wet cardboard. The university library stayed open late during exam season, and I'd taken full advantage. By midnight, I was the only one left on the second floor. The silence was thick, almost soft. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly, and the old HVAC system exhaled warm air in tired, slow breaths. I sat at a corner table near the tall windows, notes spread like a paper fortress, and tried to convince myself I could absorb an entire semester of material in one night. It was almost peaceful, until I heard footsteps. So, measured. They echoed faintly down the row of history books to my right. I froze, highlighter suspended over the page. The library closed at 11. No one should be here but me. And maybe the night guard, if he even existed. "Hello," I called. My voice felt too loud, swallowed by the carpeted air. No answer. I stood and walked down the nearest aisle, shoes silent on the faded carpet. Empty. Just rows of books, their spines like blank faces. I turned back toward my table and stopped. My phone screen glared up from the desk. No service. Weird. The signal had been fine all night. The overhead lights buzzed louder, then dipped, washing the room in gray. I told myself it was fine. Old wiring. Long night. Then I heard it. My name. Faint. Whispered. From the history section. My heart slammed like a fist in my throat. I spun toward the voice. Empty. But in the dark window reflection, something moved. A tall shadow gliding silently behind me. My breath hitched. I whipped around. Nothing. My table, my papers, the yawning emptiness. The silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt expectant. Hungry. I shoved my notes into my bag, hands trembling so hard the pages slipped to the floor. The hum of the lights felt louder now, pressing in like static. I started walking toward the exit. My boots barely touched the carpet. Then I heard it. Breathing. Behind me. Slow. Wet. My legs locked. I forced myself forward, faster, until I was almost running. The exit doors glimmered under their security lights like salvation. My breath rasped like tearing fabric. I hit the crash bar on the glass doors. They didn't move. "Come on," I hissed, shoving harder. Nothing. Behind me, a single footstep. Close. I slammed my shoulder into the doors. They burst open all at once, like pushed from the other side. Cold night air hit me like a slap. I ran into the dark, shoes smacking the concrete steps, vision tunneling, lungs ripping for air. I didn't stop until the glowing windows were far behind me, shrinking to faint yellow squares in the dark. I collapsed on the grass outside my dorm, clutching my bag to my chest like a shield, heart hammering against my ribs. I sat there until sunrise. I never went back at night. Even now, I can't step into an empty library, because the silence doesn't feel quiet anymore. It feels like it's listening. The motel balcony. He was standing on the balcony across from my room, even though that room was supposed to be empty. The motel sagged under its own weight, like it was tired of pretending to be alive. Paint peeled off the wooden railings, the buzzing neon sign out front read only under I had burned out. I had been driving for 11 hours. My eyes felt sandblasted. This was the only place for 50 miles. Inside, the lobby smelled of mildew and burned coffee. The receptionist didn't look up from her crossword. "Room 9, she mumbled, sliding a tarnished brass key across the counter. I hesitated. "Anyone else staying here tonight?" She shook her head. "All empty but you." A thin draft followed me as I climbed the creaking outdoor stairs. The sky had gone black behind the power lines. That's when I saw him, standing on the balcony across from my door. Still facing me. No phone. No bag. Just watching. I slowed, hand gripping my bag strap until my knuckles ached. "Evening," I said softly, just to break the tension. He didn't answer. Didn't blink. I slid my key into the lock, slipped inside, and turned the deadbolt. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old cigarettes. The heater rattled to life like loose coins in a dryer. I told myself he was another guest. Even though she said I was alone. Hours crawled by. I half-watched TV, too wired to sleep. At some point, I peeked through the thin curtains. He was still there. Same spot. Same posture. Watching my door. My stomach twisted. I closed the curtains tight. But later, when I checked again, he was gone from the balcony. Relief barely had time to hit before I saw him. At my window. Right against the glass. His face inches from mine. I stumbled back, heart detonating in my chest. I grabbed the room phone, dialing the front desk with shaking fingers. Silence. No dial tone. The door handle began to turn. Slow. Metal scraping metal. I lunged for the dresser and shoved it hard across the carpet. It slammed against the door frame just as the handle rattled violently. The whole frame shuddered. A single deafening bang. The walls shook. Silence. I pressed my back to the far wall, staring at the door, too scared to breathe. Minutes dragged past. Nothing moved. The heater clicked off, plunging the room into cold. I stayed like that until the sky outside the curtains turned pale. When the first strip of light hit the carpet, I grabbed my bag, shoved the dresser aside, and yanked the door open. The balcony was empty. The entire motel was silent. No footsteps. No cars. Like it had all been abandoned for years. I didn't check out. I didn't look back. I drove until the sun was high and the cracked lot was only a blur behind me. I've never stayed in a motel alone again. If I don't see cars in every space, I keep driving. Because I know how it feels to lie awake while someone stands outside your door. Waiting for you to move. The subway passenger. The subway was empty. Until he sat directly across from me, smiling like he knew a secret. It was just after 1 a.m., that hollow hour when even the city seems to hold its breath. The platform was dead silent, just the distant hum of the tunnels and the faint rattle of loose tiles under my boots. I had worked a double shift and felt like a sleepwalker as the train screeched in. The doors opened with a hiss. Empty. The car was washed in harsh fluorescent light that made everything look flat and too sharp. I sank into a seat halfway down, bag hugged to my chest. The metal was cold through my coat. The train lurched forward. We roared into the tunnel. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the hum of the tracks and the dull sway of the car. Then I blinked, and he was there, sitting directly across from me. Thin, long coat pooling around his feet, smiling. Every other seat was empty, yet he chose that one. My throat tightened. I looked away, pretending to scroll my phone. His reflection in the window still stared at me. He didn't blink, didn't shift, just smiled faintly, lips stretched too tight. His mouth started moving, but no sound came out. Whispering silently, over and over, faster, like he was arguing with someone only he could hear. The lights flickered. When they buzzed back on, he was 2 seats closer. I hadn't seen him move. The air grew colder, sharp on my face. I glanced at the emergency button above the door. It was too far. The train slowed, then stopped. In the middle of the tunnel, my breath caught. We sat there in humming silence. The lights flickered again. When they steadied, he was crouched inches from my knees. His smile was wider now. His eyes were huge, wet black, swallowing the light. My body locked up. He slowly slid his hand into his coat. I couldn't breathe. The lights went out. 3 seconds of perfect black. I heard fabric shift, feet scrape. When the lights snapped back, he was beside me, pressed against my arm, grinning. I bolted. My seat slammed into my hip as I launched forward, tearing down the aisle, my boots hammering the metal floor. The door between cars groaned as I slammed it open and stumbled into the next car. Empty. I ran to the conductor's cab and shoved the lock. My chest heaved so hard the air tasted metallic. The cab smelled like grease and dust. I crouched on the floor, clutching my bag like a shield, eyes locked on the small window. No sound came from the car behind me, just the soft rattle of wheels on track. Minutes passed like hours. When the train finally lurched back to life, I stayed locked in that cab until we reached the next station. When the doors opened, I ran. Up the stairs, through the turnstile, into the sharp cold air like surfacing from a nightmare. I walked the extra 2 hours home that night, and I still do, because I can't forget the way he smiled. Like he wasn't meeting me, like he'd been waiting. The forest biker. I thought he was just passing by, until he started circling me. It was late afternoon, the sun melting into orange behind the tree-line. The forest trail was quiet except for the soft crunch of pine needles under my boots. I'd gone hiking to clear my head after a brutal week. Choosing a loop so far from town, the silence felt like a weight on my shoulders. For an hour, it was peaceful. Then I heard tires behind me. A bike rolled past, slow, silent. The rider was tall and thin, a black hoodie pulled low. He didn't nod or glance at me, just glided by. The sound faded into the trees. I exhaled, readjusted my pack, and kept walking. 10 minutes later, he passed again. From the opposite direction. Still silent. No eye contact. No sign of effort, just coasting past like the air moved him. I frowned. The loop had no cutoffs. No cross paths. He shouldn't have been ahead of me. I walked faster. The forest grew darker, shadows stacking in the hollows between roots. Then I heard the crunch again. Closer. He emerged from the trees onto the trail ahead, tires whispering on packed dirt. He wasn't riding through. He was circling me. A slow, perfect loop, pedals barely turning. His hood hid his face, but I could feel his eyes on me. My skin prickled like it was shrinking. I stepped off the trail to let him pass. He stopped. "Lost?" he asked. His voice was too smooth, too calm. I shook my head. "Just heading back. You'll be fun to follow home," he said. Then he smiled. I ran. Branches tore at my jacket. Roots snagged my boots. The trail blurred. The sound of tires followed. Close. I cut off trail into thick brush, lungs on fire, heart a drumbeat in my teeth. Leaves exploded around me. I dove behind a fallen log and pressed flat to the dirt. Silence. Soft tire crunch. Right behind the log. I bit down on my sleeve to muffle my breathing. His voice drifted through the trees. My name. Whispered like he was savoring it. Cold sank into my bones. I stayed curled under the log until the sound faded. Until the forest went still again. Then I crawled out, shaking so hard I could barely stay on my feet, and staggered the last half-mile back to the trailhead. The parking lot was empty except for my car. I locked the doors before my bag hit the seat. Drove home with every light on. I used to love hiking alone. But now the woods don't feel peaceful. They feel like they're watching, just waiting for me to slow down. Enough to be circled. The parking lot watcher. The store was closing, but his car stayed parked beside mine, engine idling. It was close to midnight when I left the grocery store, the automatic doors sighing open into a wall of cold air. The parking lot was nearly empty, slick with patches of black ice that glinted under the buzzing sodium lights. My car sat alone near the far edge. Or almost alone. A black sedan was parked right beside it. Windows tinted black. Engine humming. A faint curl of white exhaust drifted from its tailpipe, rising like smoke into the still night air. Every other space was empty. I slowed, plastic bags biting into my fingers. No movement inside. Just the low, patient purr of the engine. A warning prickle crawled up my spine. I forced myself to keep walking, eyes on the pavement. Keys clinked softly in my grip. My boots crunched on scattered salt. The air smelled faintly metallic, like cold steel. Still no movement. I unlocked my trunk with shaking hands and loaded the bags fast, trying to look calm while my heart thrashed. When I slid into the driver's seat, my hands were slick with sweat. I locked the doors, started the engine. The sedan idled. I pulled out of the space, tires squealing faintly on the icy asphalt. The black car rolled out behind me. Headlights flared in my mirror. I told myself it was coincidence. Just another late-night shopper heading home. At the first turn, I went left. So did he. I slowed near a stop sign. He slowed too. The lot and its warm lights were long behind me now. The roads were empty, lined with shuttered buildings and skeletal trees. His headlights filled my mirrors, steady and silent. Every turn I took, he took closer now. The tightness in my chest climbed into my throat. I sped up. He matched. I slammed the brakes. So did he. No horn. No gesture. Just waiting. The streets narrowed as I reached the outskirts of my neighborhood. Houses spread farther apart, streetlights grew dim and infrequent. That's when he closed the gap. His headlights swelled until they filled my back window. My hands slipped on the wheel from sweat. I couldn't lead him to my house. I cut the wheel hard and turned into a random driveway, crunching over gravel. Killed my headlights. The black sedan stopped in the middle of the road. Its lights went off. Darkness dropped over the world like a curtain. We sat there, my breath coming in ragged bursts, the cold turning my glass to fog. Then I slammed the gear into reverse. My tires screamed. I shot backward into the street. The black car peeled after me. Its headlights blazed back on, searing white. My heart hammered so hard I saw black at the edges of my vision. The empty road blurred past in streaks of gray and yellow. I took random turns, sharp and fast, tires shrieking around corners. He stayed right behind me. Closer. Ahead. The glowing sign of the police station. Floodlights bathed the lot in harsh white. I swerved into it, tires screaming, and braked hard under the cameras. The black car sped past the entrance. Didn't slow. Didn't even glance toward me. Just vanished down a side street. I sat there shaking, chest heaving, fingers locked on the wheel. The station's lights felt unreal, like stage lights on an empty set. I waited until my heartbeat stopped rattling my ribs. Then I drove home, slow, headlights off, scanning every intersection. I never saw that car again. But ever since that night, I can't shop alone after dark. Because now, every time I step into an empty parking lot, I half expect to see a black sedan idling beside my car, engine humming like a quiet threat. The lake stranger. He was standing knee-deep in the water, just watching me. The lake was the quietest place I knew. That morning it was wrapped in mist, the surface still as glass, reflecting the pale gray sky like a cracked mirror. I went there to clear my head, to escape the static of screens and voices and deadlines. No one else was around. No cars in the dirt lot. No fishermen on the pier. Just me, the mud squelching softly under my boots, and the crisp bite of early air filling my lungs. I followed the curve of the shoreline, gravel crunching faintly beneath me. The smell of damp earth clung to everything. Then I saw him, 30 feet out, standing in the shallows. So, knee-deep, water rippled around his legs. He wore jeans and a soaked t-shirt clinging like wet paper. His arms hung limp at his sides. His head tilted slightly, watching me. I froze. My breath puffed white into the cold. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. The fog curled around him like smoke. I took a slow step back. His lips twitched. The surface around his legs stilled completely, as if holding its breath. I turned, walking fast, boots slipping on the wet stones. I glanced back. He was closer, waist deep now. No ripples, no splash, just closer. A pulse of cold slid through my chest. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, screen lighting my shaking hands. 80% battery. The screen blinked, then went black. A soft voice carried through the mist. "Come here." My heart clenched so hard it hurt. I ran. The fog swallowed the path, turned every tree into a silhouette. Water slapped behind me. Footsteps, no splash. Fast, violent, closing the distance. I sprinted, lungs shredding, boots hammering the mud. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Branches clawed my sleeves, my legs screamed, but I kept going until the mist thinned and the gravel lot appeared ahead like salvation. My car sat alone, slick with dew. I fumbled the keys, wrenched the door open, and dove inside. The locks clicked down with a sound that barely felt real. I sat there gasping, waiting for a shape to emerge from the tree line. None came. The lake stayed silent. So, I drove out with my hands welded to the wheel. In the rear view, the fog rolled back over the water like a curtain closing. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know what I saw. I only know what it felt like. Something patient, waiting, standing where no one should stand, asking me to come closer, just to see if I would. The window man. I saw his reflection in my window, but I live on the 3rd floor. It had been storming since dusk, wind howling between the buildings like it was trying to pry them open. The rain lashed my windows in hard, slanted streaks, rattling the loose panes. I was curled on the couch, lights low, a blanket wrapped around me, trying to let the sound drown out my brain. The air smelled like wet concrete and ozone. Lightning cracked somewhere close, and the entire apartment flashed white. In the glass of the window across from me, I saw him. A man. Standing behind me. I spun so fast my neck cracked. Empty. Just my living room. The reflection had been clear. Wide shoulders, tilted head, dark hair slicked to his skull like he'd climbed out of the river. A drop of cold sweat slid down my spine. I stood slowly, every muscle buzzing, and stepped toward the window. The rain blurred the city into a mess of glowing smears. No balcony outside. Nothing he could stand on. I pressed my forehead to the glass, heart thudding. That's when the curtains beside me moved. Just an inch. Just enough to stir. The window behind them was locked. No draft. My mouth went dry. I gripped the fabric and yanked it back. Nothing. Empty glass. Lightning split the sky again. and his face slammed into the window, inches from mine, soaked hair plastered to his skull, eyes wide and white, mouth curled in a stretched grin. I stumbled backward, slamming into the coffee table. The lights flickered. He pressed his palm to the glass, dragged it down, leaving a long wet smear. The glass didn't fog from his breath, didn't mist. He was on the outside of a sealed third-story window. I bolted for the door, bare feet slapping the floor. Behind me, faint nails on glass. Scraping. I flung the door open, and the apartment went black. Power gone. Wind roared through the hallway as I ran, blind and shaking. I banged on my neighbor's door until she yanked it open, eyes wide. "Please," I gasped, "please call the police." She stared at my face, then over my shoulder. Nothing was behind me. The police searched the building and found nothing. No sign anyone had climbed the walls. No footprints on my balcony. Nothing but the smear on the glass, already drying to nothing. I moved my bed to the opposite wall. I keep the curtains shut now, because sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't been looking at the window, when he was already looking at me. The bus stopped Stranger. He emerged from the woods and sat pressed against my side. The air was wet and cold, the kind that clung to your lungs. Fog curled up from the pavement as I stood at the rural bus stop, clutching my bag to my chest to keep my hands warm. It was just after sunrise, that strange hour when the world is technically awake but still half asleep. The stop was nothing but a single metal bench by the edge of a wooded field. No shelter, no lights, no one else, until I heard footsteps, slow, uneven, from the tree line behind me. A man emerged, moving like he wasn't sure how his legs worked. His clothes were caked with dried mud. His hair hung in greasy clumps over his face. He walked straight toward the bench and sat down, pressed right up against me. The entire bench was empty, and he chose that spot. His arm brushed mine. My whole body locked. I slid a few inches away, pretending to adjust my bag. He slid closer, pressed against me again. His breath smelled sour, faintly metallic. His eyes were wide, glassy, fixed on my face. Unblinking, I stared forward, heart thudding, muscles screaming to run. Then he started whispering. At first it was just the shape of words, lips moving too fast to form sound. Then louder, faster, like an argument with someone only he could see. His eyes never left mine. "Where do you live?" he asked suddenly. My mouth went dry. "What? Is anyone expecting you today?" His lips twitched, almost smiling. Ice shot down my spine. I stood slowly, gripping my bag so hard my knuckles cracked. That's when I saw it. A small rusted knife in his hand, dragging across the metal bench. Screeching. The sound tore through the fog. He smiled wider. I bolted. He lunged, fingers snatching my sleeve, yanking hard. The fabric tore as I ripped free, sprinting straight into the road. A horn blared. Tires screeched. A car slammed to a stop just feet from me. The man froze, then bolted, straight back into the trees, vanishing like smoke. The driver jumped out, shouting, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. My throat locked. He glanced at the woods, then back at me and just opened the passenger door. I climbed in, shivering so hard my teeth chattered. We drove in silence. I kept my eyes on the mirror, watching the tree line shrink and disappear. I never sat at that bus stop again. Now I stand far away, feet planted, muscles tense, ready to run. Because I know what it feels like when someone sits inches from you, just to see if you'll move. The Snowbound Stranger. He was barefoot in the snow, and smiling at me. The world was silent. Snow blanketed the street in thick white sheets, softening everything, sound, shape, color, until the whole neighborhood felt like it had been erased. It was almost midnight. My shift had run late and the buses had stopped running, so I decided to walk home. Each step crunched softly under my boots. My breath fogged the freezing air in pale bursts. Every house I passed was dark, curtains drawn, driveways empty. The streetlights buzzed weakly through the curtain of falling snow. And then I saw him, across the street, standing ankle-deep in the snow. A thin white t-shirt clung to him like wet tissue, his hair plastered to his forehead. His lips were cracked blue, and he was smiling. Too wide. I stopped mid-step, cold stabbing up through my boots. He didn't move, didn't blink. His eyes locked on mine like they'd been waiting. My throat tightened. I forced myself to walk faster, boots crunching louder, trying to look calm while panic surged through my chest. When I glanced back, he was closer, still on the other side of the street. Half the distance now. I nearly slipped on the ice. My heart slammed against my ribs. I pulled my phone from my pocket with shaking fingers. 80% battery. The screen blinked, then went black. A pulse of cold shot through me. Snow fell heavier now, muffling the world until it felt like cotton pressed over my ears. I glanced back again. He was in the street, 10 feet behind me, bare feet slapping the snow. His smile had stretched wider, teeth glinting under the pale streetlight. I ran, boots skidding, lungs tearing for air. The world tunneled to the dark smudge of my building at the end of the block. The slap of his feet quickened. Louder. Closer. I risked a glance back. He was sprinting, arms stiff at his sides, head tilted. That smile like it would split his face. I pushed harder, legs screaming, boots slipping on the ice. I hit the stairs to my building, nearly falling. He was on the sidewalk below, close enough to touch. I clawed the railing, hauling myself up, keys fumbling from numb fingers. The lock fought me. His feet hit the bottom step. The door opened. I slammed it behind me and threw the deadbolt just as his shadow crossed the frosted glass. Silence. I collapsed to the floor, chest heaving, heart shaking the walls of my ribs. Through the side window, I saw him standing outside, still smiling, the snow rising around his ankles. He didn't move, didn't shiver, didn't breathe, just stood there. Minutes passed, then an hour, and as the first thin strip of dawn seeped over the rooftops, turned and walked away, slow, deliberate. His bare feet leaving perfect black prints that the snow swallowed behind him. I don't walk home during snowstorms anymore, because I know what it's like to see something impossible, watching you from across the street, like it's been waiting all night.